All right, welcome to the next video, Creating Wealth. We're going to be talking about money distribution strategy. So hopefully you've watched the video just before and done that little exercise of looking back over the past 12 months and picking up some clues and some patterns. But money distribution is a big part of the game. And the context is this. So you've got some chips now. You've got some chips in your hand. You've also got some chips in your pocket, which is hopefully a strategy that I can share with you all. What do you do with it? What do you do with it? You know, because I think the distribution of money and seeing money as a tool is a really good way of viewing it. And I think the people that really master the game, they almost get to the point where they realize that they can transcend money, meaning it no longer becomes a meaning prescriber, if I can use those words, of who you are as a person.
Yes.
But you rather just see it merely as what it is, which is a tool and a resource. That's all it is. That's all money is. And so when you get to see that, and maybe that's a lesson for people watching it right now, never allow yourself to have money define who you are. Okay, it is merely a resource. It is merely a tool, and all it does is move things. That's all resources do. It moves things. So then once you got to that level, it's about then how do you distribute your money? And we've seen players do this really well. We've seen players do this not so well. And I think there's some analogies and metaphors around the chips in your hand and sometimes the chips in your pocket. Das, what have you noticed around people and how they handle the money itself how they handle the chips once they've got it? What have you noticed as a facilitator? Just observing different people's strategies around this.
Well, I think it's one of the most interesting parts about playing the sales game is that the scoring is done by having chips in your hand, like the actual tangible scorecard is the chips that you can feel with your hands, literally and physically. And so it is interesting to see how people operate with the chips. Are they happy to leave them sitting at their table, trusting that they'll be okay? Or do they carry them with them everywhere they go and guard and protect the money with all their life? Again, no pros, no, nothing's better or worse or whatever, just pros and cons of each.
Just awareness, yeah.
Just awareness of how you're handling your money. When you're talking with someone, are you sitting there playing with your money while you're talking to them? Which makes it kind of obvious what this conversation's really about to you. You know, that's interesting as well. How do you give your chips to someone else? Are you shaking while you're doing it? Is it a traumatic experience to lose some of your chips and give them to someone else? Is it a traumatic experience receiving them? Like how do you actually receive it? Do you wait for someone to give it to you, or do you take it from them, or do you extend your arm out half the way and then expect them to meet you at the other half as well?
Huge.
You know, again, everything's a clue, right? But when it comes to actual money distribution and the use of money, it's more of a conversation around, do you have, shall we call them buckets to put your money into to decide this is what I'm going to hold on to.
Yep.
This is what I'm going to put to use. This is what I'm going to give away.
Yep.
Are you conscious and deliberate and aware around how you're doing that is the question that's being asked.
100%. I think it's really interesting, the awareness and how deep people can take it is how they handle the money physically.
Okay.
What do they do with it? Because I've seen some great players in the past, and maybe they're blackjack players or something like that. But something I found really beneficial to myself, and I think this can be used as an analogy, is when you're making profits. So you start with a number of chips, and when you start making profits with it, is to grab those profits and pocket them. Mm-hmm. And I saw a particular player do this in the previous game. Every time they were up, they essentially always had that profits put aside to understand that that's almost like the resources they could reinvest if they chose to. Maybe you could make a little bit of a stronger bet or something like that, but also to keep a score of where you're actually sitting, positive, negative. Your pockets are empty. It's probably likely you're not making a lot of profit. You're actually in deficit right now and you might need to go to work, you know. It's a really interesting thing to keep in mind is this bucket analogy of you got money coming in where do you distribute that money? Does it all just stay in one clump? Do you put some aside for rainy days? Do you put some aside for investment? Do you have some that you use as more speculative? These are quite interesting things that we've just observed players do. And for those that haven't played the chips game yet, I'd love for you to just explore this the next time you play. Is one, how are you physically handling money and what does that mean about how you treat it as a resource? But two, get in the habit of siphoning some money away, because what it allows you to do, if you've got a buffer, is why I encourage everyone to get in the mindset of ensuring you always have a healthy buffer aligned to their own thermostat, is it allows you to not be anxious around time because you have time saved. That's what a buffer does as a cash balance, so to speak, or a chip balance, is it gives you time to maybe play the observation strategy and then make wise decisions rather than forced decisions. Really,
they're often emotional rather than logical.
Totally. And money distribution is very much better played when logical than emotional.
Yes.
Those that play the game emotionally, they get caught up in the gambling side of things and just being silly around it. But that's not to discredit. We had one player that literally gave away all his chips in the first 5 minutes, but came back to win the game.
Pretty extraordinary.
Completely interesting. But the key takeaway with that was it was deliberate.
Yes.
He did that purposefully. And I think perhaps he was the only person at that point realized that the chips didn't have any value.
Yeah.
He made himself become the value. Did you notice this? This was his playing style.
Powerful.
I think there's a really great analogy, is that the money in itself has no value. So it's a good way to think about money distribution.
Go a little bit more practical on that for us.
Well, I think what happens is sometimes people, and this is not to discredit, you can make foolish decisions with money. I just think you become free of it and can make way better strategic decisions, and you can create a lot more wealth when you don't prescribe any value to it. Rather, you simply realize that it's a resource and a tool. Okay? I'll make it super practical now. The key question then becomes, when you realize that money has no value in and of itself, it's simply a resource and a tool to move things, you then need to realize and transcend that question to really grab the practical power of this. And that is, who made the money?
I would say people.
People. And so this is where we tie back the analogy of this player who gave away all the chips, probably realized, he's a very successful businessman in his own regard. He realized that the chips had no value in and of itself. So he was free to give them all away, to then prescribe value to him, the maker of the chips, and then come home and set a record for the chips game. Unbelievable. I think there's a lesson in that, because I think the best thing you can ever back yourself on, for going to the backing yourself principle, is, do you have the ability to generate chips at will?
Nice.
That is the best thing you can ever learn in business, is the understanding of, that's fine. I can invest this resource. It's kind of like our strategy right now in the sales game does. We are literally reinvesting every single dollar we make back into the creation of the game and the overarching philosophy of what it is. The reason we are okay to invest every single dollar is we both genuinely know how to generate chips at will. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
When you can back yourself that you are the creator of money, that is when a whole paradigm starts to shift and you can actually make super strategic decisions.
The equation that makes this super practical is, when we think about money, quite often people say, oh, I need money, right? And that may be the case for some people. Of course, in a practical world that we live in, you need money. Well, you don't need money to survive. It just makes survival a hell of a lot easier. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's good.
So when we think about money, here's the thing, is that if money failed to exist, if money ceases to exist tomorrow, do we still get to be here? And the answer is yes. We still matter. We still have a purpose. But if we cease to exist tomorrow, does money have any purpose? And the answer is no, completely not. Money ceases to exist when we stop to exist.
For sure.
But if money ceases, we still remain, right? And so the question needs to be asked, do you need money or does money need you?
Yeah, that's great.
And that comes from Dan Kennedy, who unfortunately passed away last month. He's an incredible business mind. But when I heard this from him, my entire perspective of wealth and how it's generated and who's generating it, and who needs who more than anything, it completely shifted. Yeah. And you start to see the streets are awash with money. You start to see the fact that money needs you. All you need to do is be ready to give it a reason to come to you.
Yeah.
And quite often, if we treat money just like, if we do ascribe the idea of money personality traits, well, all it is just a form of energy. And ultimately what it wants to do is grow just like anything else. Money's not going to want to hang out in places where it's not going to become more of itself. Why would any energy want to do that? That doesn't make any sense.
It's like the personification of money, yeah?
That's it. And so if money was a person, all it would want to do is go hang out where it's going to experience more of itself and grow, just like you, me, or the person listening to this right now. It's of course what we want to do. So you need to be able to represent to money, hey, if you come to me, I will help you make more of yourself.
Yeah.
And the way that we'll do that is if you come to me, I'll use you to create marketing strategies, to create sales, I have an idea I want to expand upon.
To build leverage.
Totally. I can totally see how this idea is going to work. And if you start showing the world, start showing money, hey, I'm committed to this, I'm going to make this work, magically money doesn't just arrive in your bank account. Of course, that's not how it works. But conversations and opportunities that money sits at the end of start to arise in your world.
100%.
And you just got to understand that that's how money flows. 100%. And that's how it wants to be distributed. It wants to grow.
It's really smart. Really, really practical tip for those that are in business for themselves, responsible for making their own money and in cash. Work out what your expenses are to live a good life. Nothing extravagant, but aligned to your thermostat. Multiply that number by 3, as in monthly expenses. Multiply that number by 3. That is your new pocket money. Nice. That's a really practical way to do it, is set that as an immediate goal as far as having that amount of cash in your bank at any given time. That's the buffer that'll allow you to not treat yourself emotionally when it comes to money. You know that you're always 3 months ahead. You've always bought yourself 90 days. Even better when you can get it to 180 days or even a year, depending on what your tolerance is to cash. But as far as this, to tie it really practically around this, is one, just know what your expenses are to live a good life, aligned to your thermostat. Monthly expenses multiplied by 3. That's what I'd recommend you focus on siphoning away and putting in your pocket. And you'll find the rest of this, learning. This is probably one to actually watch as a video, probably over and over again, because you'll find that it changes. Your psychology around it changes a lot. And it's probably a good thing to review over and over again to understand how it all kind of works. But it's a big part of the game, is your association with money, what you make it mean or not mean, how you use it, and how it comes into existence and companionship with you.
Nice. Good words. I like that.
A really good thing to explore within yourself. Possibly a good journal video, would you say, Das? Start thinking
100%,
about.
100%.
Cool. Love to know. Comment down below. What resonated with you in this video? What was a light bulb moment or a remembering moment where you're like, oh, yeah, interesting.
Let us know.
That'd be interesting. Yeah.